Yo.
Hey guys, so Seth and I are back again, and for this video, we're actually going to talk about good horror sequels, like what makes. And Seth is making funny faces.
No, it wasn't.
Okay,
Liar.
um, but anyway, guys, like I said, we're talking about good horror sequels, and so I'm going to start today, kind of saying, what makes a good sequel? I mean, what makes a good continuation of a horror film? Like what makes us want to come back to that horror film and say, you know what, that was actually a good continuation. That was a good. Um, you can tell that they went into it saying, we're not in this for the money. We're in this because we think a good continuation could happen, kind of a thing. So to start off, guys, I'm going to talk about Halloween H20. It was the seventh Halloween film, and surprisingly enough, it was better than a lot of the other Halloween films that came before it, a lot of the sequels. And what kind of made this one special, you guys, and actually I appreciated this film more after I saw the behind-the-scenes documentary about it. They tried to make it along the line as the original Halloween as possible, and what they did is they got Jamie Lee Curtis back. They have Janet Leigh from Psycho, who was like a huge homage, referenced a lot in the first Halloween. Actually, her car from Psycho was in the film too at one point. Yeah, there's just a ton of things they did with this sequel that really made it feel like an ultimate homage slash ultimate anniversary
One
to
thing I loved
Halloween.
about that film was it was a reunion, and it
Yeah.
was great because not only was it a reunion, but it
Also,
was
the
it was
nurse
all
from
the
the first film was back.
nurse from the first film.
Remember the opening scene?
In the opening scene, yeah, actually, when
The
she
nurse
was
from
attacked
the
by Michael
the,
Myers.
the
Yeah,
nurse
she was in the
from
car.
the
Yeah.
beginning of
I remember that.
Halloween was also in the beginning of Halloween H20.
Okay. Yeah, it was great because, like I said, not only was it a reunion, but it was all the characters all grown up, and it was kind of interesting because now Jamie Lee Curtis's character was all grown up. She already had a kid, and of course, her kid was in high school. I think at the time wasn't he in high
Well,
school,
the
or actually
deal-
was he at a private college?
Well, here's the deal. Okay, so in Halloween 4, it's introduced to the fact that she had a daughter at one point,
Mm-hmm.
and it's introduced in Halloween 7 that she had a son.
Uh-huh.
However, the daughter was put up for adoption, which was the one used for 4 and 5, and part of 6.
That's right. Okay.
And the son that she kept with her, which I'm assuming she had with another man, was the son she raised for this private school in Halloween H2O.
That makes sense. Okay. Thanks for the clear up.
But anyway, what's kind of neat about the sequel, guys, is kind of like the original. Jamie Lee Curtis is stuck in an area where she thinks she's going to be comfortable. She thinks, the whole Michael Myers thing was done with. It's 20 years later. She's telling people who she's comfortable with now in this town that, I was this girl who lived in Haydenfield at one point, and then my brother came after me with a knife. And so, at first people are like, whatever. And so it's not until Michael Myers comes to this private school where things start to get really serious. And what's kind of cool is, if you remember the original Halloween where she tells the young kids to go look for help, like the police and stuff, there's a scene in this movie that plays out just like that too, where the son and the girlfriend are asked to go look for the police now instead.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it just felt like a great homage. It felt like a great continuation. It felt like the sequel that the Halloween fans finally deserved. It wasn't like, well, we'll just make Halloween 4 and hope the fans like it. Oh, we'll just make Halloween 6 and hope the fans will like it. It really felt like there was a reasoning why the film was made.
Or we'll just make Halloween 3 and not have Michael Myers, and it's like, oh wait, that's right, they wanted Michael Myers in the first place.
And that's what happened with that
Yep.
movie. The next film we're going to talk about, guys, is Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. This is, if I were to tell you my favorite horror sequel, it would probably be this movie. I think the idea that, because at the time, people are like, oh, with Johnny Depp being the first film, who could they ever get for the third film to make it as good? And at the time, they got the Apocalypse Now star Lawrence Fishburne to be in the movie. And they also got Patricia Arquette to be in the movie as well. And what was kind of cool, you guys, is number 3 in the Nightmare on Elm Street series introduced the idea of shared dreaming. The fact that you can bring people in that into the dream when they're sleeping as well. And it's an aspect that wasn't shared in the first 2 films. And I also like how they brought Nancy Thompson back from the first movie, because she was not in the second movie. And I really liked how Freddy was very menacing in this film. You really got the impression you were watching this guy who really wanted to come after you and seek revenge on someone. And I guess, and a famous film critic once said, a good horror film are the ones where you really care about the victims in the movie. It's a film where kind of like with the original Halloween, where you really care about these characters and you really want them to survive all these situations. And to me, I really liked how there's a scene in this movie near the beginning where these kids all have to share their goals in this room when they first meet Nancy Thompson. And you want them to live because one of them wants to become a movie star, the other wants to become a musician, the other one wants to become a puppeteer. So they have these goals in mind and they state them right away so you know exactly what they want. And you know if that Freddy kills them off, those dreams are going to be long gone from them.
You know, it's funny if you actually, for any of you guys who have actually watched the film, basically, each of their deaths, you know, of course, besides the survivor, was basically their deaths was actually representative of what they wanted to be. So the girl that wanted to be an actor, Freddy's like, he shoved her inside the TV, of course. So it was kind of cool because it kind of made that correlation between like this is what she wants to be, but of course she can't because she already got killed by Freddy.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I liked about number 3 is I liked how Freddy played off of the fact that he was crushing their dreams.
Basically,
and
yeah.
it's basically kind of the polar opposite of what you want these characters to ideally accomplish. And I guess that's what makes this horror film very good is you want them to succeed, but they got to overcome something that's even bigger than they are. And so I guess that's one reason why number 3 was so successful for me. And also the fact that Frank Darabont, who later directed Shawshank Redemption, was the screenwriter of this movie. So I thought that was very cool. And also this film, I believe, had the same director as The Mask, which is another film I really enjoy. And it's just Wes Craven, I think, was executive producer on this one since number 2 didn't do as well as they hoped. So it's just one of those things where I felt number 3 was in good hands. I guess that's another reason why I felt so comfortable watching number 3 also. Would you say the same, Seth?
I'd probably say the same thing, yeah, definitely.
And also, that was the first film where we got to see Freddy's mother also. So that was kind of a cool thing to see, too. The next one we're going to talk about, you guys, is actually another Nightmare on Elm Street, and then I'll let you talk here after this one. Another Nightmare on Elm Street sequel. It was actually the 7th film. It was called Wes Craven's New Nightmare. And what was kind of cool about this film, you guys, is Wes Craven stated that this film was kind of his warm-up to the Scream movies. And what he means by that is he wants it to play in a real-time format. And how he did that is, rather than Heather Langenkamp playing Nancy Thompson again, Heather Langenkamp plays herself. And how that also works is at the beginning of the film, she's being interviewed. She's having bad dreams that she's working on another Nightmare on Elm Street film. And people are always asking, you know, is there going to be another Freddy film? Is there going to be another one? Somebody said, you know, even though it was called Freddy's Dead, is there going to be like a Freddy Resurrection or some kind or something? And, you know, she's saying, no, I'm done. I have a kid now. You know, I want to move on to other movies. And so it's not until later in the film where both Robert Shea and Wes Craven state that they want to make another Nightmare film because the fans want it so badly. And then after that's mentioned in the film, and after Heather Langenkamp once again states, I'm done with the series, bad things start to happen in the same fashion that the original film did. Her kids having nightmares. The kids having nightmares about this guy with knives in his hand, which is obviously Freddy. And I also like how Wes Craven almost recreated Freddy for this film. He gave him a new look. Rather than having the traditional red and green sweater, he gave a black overcoat over that sweater. He rather than having a knifed glove, the knives are actually attached to Freddy's skeleton. So I thought that was kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And also, if you look at the end credits, guys, there actually is on the scenes at the beginning where Robert Englund's on the talk show as dressed up as Freddy Krueger. Robert Englund is credited as himself and Freddy Krueger.
I thought that was kind of cool.
Did you kind of see the end credits? It says real Freddy Krueger plays himself. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was kind of an interesting... Mm-hmm. And even though we all know that Robert Englund really played him in the movie, mm-hmm. I thought that was kind of a unique thing for fans to watch.
The part in the film where Nancy actually calls Robert. I was like, Robert, you know, something strange is going on. He's like, well, I'll have to get back to you because he was actually painting a picture of Freddy, I think. Yep. Wasn't he?
He was painting a picture of Freddy, and not only was he painting a picture of Freddy, it also showed below those demons that controlled Freddy that was revealed in Nightmare 6. Mm-hmm. And he knew, since he was a part of Nightmare 6, that that's exactly what the painting was. And so it was one of those, another film, kind of like Nightmare 3, you guys, where they really wanted to give a film that the fans deserved. And unfortunately, Wes Craven's New Nightmare actually didn't make a lot of money because the fans were so sick of the series at the time it came out. Mm-hmm. I just thought it was a very nice homage. It's almost too bad that the fans wouldn't give it a chance because it really had a lot of things going for it that I thought were possibly even more unique than the original film itself. So, any finishing thoughts on the 7th Nightmare film?
I thought it was just a good campy film. I think it was more of a realistic take on Freddy Krueger. I would say it was a little bit less humor, but more about the realism and the way he attacked his prey. So I think overall it was a good film. A lot better than what was it, Five, which was
Dream Child. Yeah,
the
that
Dream
wasn't very
Child
good.
was horrible. Even the way actually he killed his victims was very
Yeah.
tacky. So
And actually, I heard in an interview somewhere, Robert Englund stated himself. He said, "If I were to go back and change something in my career, he said I would have gave more effort to Nightmare 5 because he said at the time he just got done making Nightmare 4 that he was sick of playing Freddy at the time and wanted to move on to other roles.
Sure.
But because New Line Cinema is like, oh please, we got to make more money off the franchise.
I'm
He's
sure
like, okay, I'll come back.
Well, hey Robert, if you can come back to play Freddy Krueger, we'll pay you a lot more money.
Yeah.
Like,
and
fine.
so obviously he did,
Mm-hmm.
and he even stated himself. He said because of he was kind of half spirited for the fifth film. He said he really felt like he didn't give the role the full effort that he did throughout the rest of the series. And so even though he had more energy for Nightmare 6, he said Nightmare 5 to him just struck him as a money grabber, and that's one reason why he didn't like the film as much as other people did. And even people like me, who's a huge Freddy fan, even thought Nightmare 5 wasn't very good. But so before we conclude and go on to part 2, you guys, I'm actually going to let Seth talk about some of his favorite sequels too.
I'm just going to talk one film before we wrap up here in part 1. Scream 4, which was, of course, the fourth film in Scream's franchise. A lot better than 3 and 2. 3 and 2 were just garbage. 3 was basically a story rehashed in Hollywood, and that's really all I need to say just because it was just that boring. There was just no point of the film needed to be made. And the bad thing is, I believe Wes Craven actually directed all the films. I know he directed number 4 and number 1, I think
he did do number 2 and 3 also.
And I want to say he directed it. If he didn't direct it, I know he for sure produced 2 and 3. But 2, I thought it was kind of clever the way they did it in the movie theater, the beginning sequence, where the girl and the guy, the couple, sitting in the movie theater watching like Stab 2, which is basically a ripoff of like what the whole point of Scream is about. And how of course the guy was like in the he thought there was something going on. So anyways, he ends up going into the bathroom stall, and of course, like when he's taking a dump or whatever, he's putting his head to the wall because he thinks like something's going on, like some other couple's like getting it on or whatever. And of course, the ghost face, takes a nice bam right in the side of his head. So I thought it was kind of corny, but in a way, it was kind of fun. Just
it reintroduced you to the ghost face, I guess.
I think the only reason why I thought it was a little original, just because they try to put more fear into the movie theater when fans were actually going to see this film. So I would say that's the only thing good about Scream 2. So Scream 2 and 3 were just I hated them.
3 I remember being really bad. In fact,
I
didn't even watch 3 all the way through.
In fact, it was bad because I believe I watched Scream 3. I rented it from the library, and like I said, it was just a bad film. Don't even go see it. If you want to go see it, I mean, just because you want to see all the Scream films, then yeah, go ahead, be my guest. But I'd recommend not seeing it. But anyway, Scream 4. Scream 4 I thought was a great film. I think it definitely paid homage to the first film. And it was basically all the characters were grown up. Kind of like how you explained about H2O.
Yeah.
Characters are grown up. They have kids. Whatnot. They have different.
Even
careers.
Nightmare 7 did.
But it was basically the same thing with Scream 4. All the characters are grown up. Sidney Prescott was able. I'm just trying to think.
I think she moved to a different town or something.
I believe she was actually a book writer. And
yeah, because I think she wrote about her experiences.
She was actually talking about her experiences, her real life experiences with the Ghostface killer. And at the time, and it was funny because actually in the first film, you saw David Arquette's character. He was the cop. He was actually the deputy. But actually in this film, he's kind of like he's the head honcho. He's basically he's the sheriff in Scream 4. So it was kind of nice because, like I said, Scream 4, all characters were grown up. Everybody had these pretty good upstanding positions they were holding, so that you knew they had this grown up feeling, like they were a little bit more mature. So but like I said, I think most of the elements in this film just paid a lot of great homage to the first film, and on top of that you're introduced to new characters, a couple of geeks, I forget the names of the characters, but a couple of geeks who are involved in a movie club. And of course, one of the scenes was they show a scene that they're part of the club. You know, they're basically talking about horror sequels, like we are in this part one. But they're talking about horror sequels and actually how you can survive, like in a horror sequel, kind of like how in Scream One. He's kind of like the comedic guy.
So they basically told they laid out the ground rules of the first three, and they explained how it was going to be different.
And basically they did the same thing with these two guys who were in the movie club, and they laid the ground rules like this is actually how you survive a horror film. But actually nowadays with the new technology, like with the iPad, like with new iPhones and cameras, the rules have changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so
they say that virgins can die now, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And now virgins can die, which is I thought that was kind of cool. So yeah, it was just brand new rules, new characters, but basically the characters were kind of referenced to the first film. So I thought it was great. Like I said, just a lot of homage paid to the first film, and like I said, new characters introduced. One of the other characters, and I really would love to tell you who the killer is and how the ending ends, but you have to see it for yourself because I thought it was a good film. It was a good, fun horror film. I think it was better than campy. I think it was a lot better than campy. It was a lot of fun to watch. And I remember seeing it in theaters last year, and actually it was one of the few horror films I watched in theaters. Left the theater, I'm like, wow, you know what? I was pretty satisfied. Unlike seeing the remake for Nightmare on Elm Street, which I thought was disappointing. But that's a new topic altogether. But anyways, yeah, Scream 4, great film. I would recommend go see it.
So when we come back, you guys, for part 2, we're going to talk about more horror sequels that we enjoy watching. So make sure you stay for part 2.